You're telling me the janitor triggered a federal lockdown? The laughter came fast inside the glass-walled executive lobby of Whitmore Dynamics, sharp and careless like ice cracking under expensive shoes. Employees gathered near the security desk pretending not to stare while Caleb Mercer stood alone beside a cardboard box holding everything he owned inside the building. A faded thermos. A folded navy jacket. A framed picture of a little blonde girl smiling with missing front teeth. Rain hammered softly against the 42-story windows overlooking downtown Chicago, while fluorescent lights buzzed overhead with the cold hum of corporate indifference. Claire Whitmore didn't raise her voice when she stepped out of the elevator. She never had to. The entire lobby shifted the moment her black heels touched the marble floor. Elegant charcoal suit. Silver earrings. Calm blue eyes that missed nothing. The kind of woman magazines called unstoppable. The kind of woman who built billion-dollar defense contracts before turning 35. She glanced once at the termination papers in her hand, then at Caleb. Your access card has been revoked effective immediately, she said evenly. Security will escort you out. One young analyst near the coffee station smirked under his breath. Guess the maintenance guy finally messed up. A few nervous chuckles followed. Caleb didn't react. He simply lowered his eyes toward the small photo frame resting inside the box. Lily grinned back at him from beneath a pink baseball cap at Navy Pier last summer. 8 years old. Missing one tooth. Holding cotton candy bigger than her face. Caleb picked up the frame carefully like it mattered more than the building behind him. Can I keep this? He asked quietly. Claire looked at the photo for half a second longer than she intended. Something about the child's smile softened the steel in her expression before professionalism returned. Of course. Caleb nodded once. Thank you. No anger. No pleading. No argument. That somehow made the room more uncomfortable. Outside, thunder rolled low above the skyline as security approached. Caleb lifted the box himself before either guard could touch it. His old brown work boots squeaked faintly against the polished floor as he walked toward the revolving doors. Someone whispered, "Man didn't even fight for the job." Another answered, "Guys like him never do." Claire remained still near the center of the lobby, arms folded lightly across her waist, watching him disappear into the gray rain beyond the glass. Most people stormed out after getting fired. Some cursed. Some threatened lawsuits. Caleb Mercer walked away like a man already carrying something heavier than humiliation. The revolving doors turned slowly behind him. Rain soaked his shoulders almost instantly as he crossed the street without opening the old jacket folded over his arm. Downtown traffic hissed through puddles beside him. Horns echoed between skyscrapers. Yet somehow he still looked calm. Claire frowned slightly from the lobby window high above the entrance. Something about the man unsettled her. Not weakness. Not defeat. Restraint. As if he had spent years learning how to survive storms other people couldn't imagine. Her assistant stepped beside her carefully. "You okay, Ms. Whitmore?" Claire kept watching the lone figure moving through the rain below. "Did we ever run a background check on him? Maintenance hires usually go through standard clearance." "Run it again." The assistant blinked. "Tonight." Claire's eyes remained fixed on Caleb disappearing down the sidewalk beneath flashing traffic lights. Far above the city, almost hidden beneath the storm, a distant chopping sound began to echo through the clouds. Before the story takes a turn, subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss what happens next. And tell me, do you think she should trust him? Let me know in the comments. Now let's continue. The rain followed Caleb Mercer for nearly 6 blocks before the city finally began to thin around him. Neon reflections shimmered across wet sidewalks while cold November wind curled through the streets carrying the smell of diesel, wet concrete, and distant traffic. His shoulders were soaked now, but he barely seemed to notice. The cardboard box rested steadily beneath one arm, while his other hand held an old flip phone against his ear. "Daddy." The tiny voice instantly softened something behind his tired eyes. "Hey, Bug." Caleb stepped beneath the narrow awning of a closed pharmacy while buses hissed through puddles nearby. "You still at Mrs. Donnelly's?" "Yes, but she burned the grilled cheese again." Caleb smiled faintly for the first time all day. "That bad?" The smoke alarm apologized. He closed his eyes briefly, letting the sound of his daughter's laughter cut through the storm inside him. "I am gonna be a little late tonight, sweetheart." Work. A pause settled between them. Caleb glanced back toward the skyline where Whitmore Dynamics pierced the gray clouds like a steel monument. Something like that. Lily lowered her voice. Did something bad happen? Caleb looked down at the photo frame inside the box, rainwater dripping slowly from the cardboard edges. No, baby girl. Just one of those days where life changes directions a little. Are we still having spaghetti night? Another small smile touched his face. Absolutely. Extra Parmesan too. Promise. Always. He hung up slowly and slipped the phone back into his pocket. Across the street, a television inside a sports bar flickered blue light onto the wet pavement while strangers laughed over beer and football highlights, completely unaware that a man's entire life had just shifted 3 blocks away. Yet Caleb did not look broken. He looked practiced, like someone who had learned long ago that pain arrived quietly and left the same way. 42 floors above the city, Claire Whitmore stood inside her darkened office staring at the personnel file glowing on her screen. Caleb Mercer, age 42, maintenance technician, former Air Force, no disciplinary issues, no criminal record, minimal employment history for nearly a decade. The gaps bothered her most. Entire years missing, like someone had intentionally erased pieces of the man. Her assistant stood nearby holding a tablet nervously. That is all we could pull from the standard database. Claire frowned. No social media? Nothing active. Family. 1 daughter. No spouse listed. Lightning flashed outside the massive office windows, illuminating Claire's reflection against the glass. Calm face. Perfect posture. But underneath it, curiosity had begun pressing against instinct. Something about Caleb Mercer did not fit the image of a failed maintenance worker carrying his life in a cardboard box through the rain. Down below, Caleb crossed another intersection as traffic lights reflected red across the soaked street. A homeless veteran sitting beneath a bus stop shelter looked up at him. Long night? The older man asked quietly. Caleb stopped, reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out the only $20 bill he had left. You eat yet? The veteran blinked in surprise. No. Caleb handed him the bill without hesitation. Get something warm. Man, you sure? Caleb nodded once. Everybody needs a little help sometimes. Then he kept walking into the storm before the man could say another word. High above the city, Claire's office windows trembled softly. At first she thought it was thunder again. Then came the low mechanical vibration rolling through the glass tower from somewhere above the clouds. Her assistant looked toward the ceiling. What is that? Claire turned slowly toward the dark skyline outside just as 3 distant lights emerged through the rain, descending fast through the storm with the unmistakable sound of military rotor blades. The first helicopter broke through the storm clouds like a shadow descending from another world. Rain spiraled violently across the rooftop of Whitmore Dynamics as the deep thunder of rotor blades rolled through downtown Chicago, rattling windows and silencing conversations across every floor of the tower. Employees rushed toward the glass walls in confusion while security guards pressed hands to their earpieces, suddenly tense. What is happening? Someone whispered near the executive lobby. Is that military? Another helicopter emerged behind the first, matte black against the lightning-filled sky, followed by a third flying in precise formation. Claire Whitmore stepped out of her office elevator just as the entire building trembled beneath the vibration. Her assistant hurried beside her, clutching a tablet against her chest. The rooftop team says they did not authorize any landing. Clearance. Claire's expression sharpened instantly. Who contacted them? Nobody knows. The lobby lights reflected against the rain-soaked windows while executives gathered near reception, murmuring nervously as the helicopters circled once above the tower. Then one by one, they descended toward the rooftop landing platform reserved only for federal defense contractors and classified visitors. Silence spread slowly through the building. Even the employees who had laughed earlier now stood frozen beside their coffee cups. The sound was impossible to ignore. Heavy, controlled, official. A security supervisor rushed across the marble floor toward Claire. Ma'am, we have military personnel requesting immediate access to executive operations. Which branch? They would not specify. Before Claire could respond, The front doors opened automatically and cold rain swept briefly through the lobby as 3 men entered wearing dark tactical jackets beneath formal military overcoats. No weapons visible. No raised voices. Yet the atmosphere shifted instantly around them. The oldest among them stepped forward first. Silver hair. Broad shoulders. Calm eyes that looked trained to notice everything. He removed a pair of black leather gloves slowly before speaking. Claire Whitmore. Yes. Lieutenant General Nathan Holloway. He handed over a federal identification case without hesitation. Claire scanned it quickly. Department of Defense. Classified Operations Division. Her pulse tightened slightly. How can I help you, General? Holloway glanced around the lobby once, his eyes passing over nervous employees and stunned executives before settling back on her. We are looking for Commander Caleb Mercer. The entire room went still. One analyst near the elevators blinked in confusion. Another quietly muttered, "The janitor?" Holloway's gaze shifted immediately toward the voice. Not angry. Not threatening. Just cold enough to silence the room completely. Claire felt her stomach tighten. "Commander," she repeated carefully. "There must be some mistake. Caleb Mercer worked maintenance here." "Formerly," Holloway corrected gently. Rain hammered against the towering windows. Behind him, while distant rotor blades continued spinning overhead like the heartbeat of something enormous waiting above the city. Claire tried to steady her voice. "Mr. Mercer no longer works for this company." For the first time, the general's expression changed. Not outrage. Disappointment. Quiet and heavy. "That is unfortunate timing." Another officer stepped beside him carrying a secure black case handcuffed to his wrist. "Sir," he said softly. Holloway nodded once, then looked back toward Claire. "Ms. Whitmore, approximately 40 minutes ago, multiple defense communication systems tied to your company experienced coordinated intrusion attempts." Murmurs spread instantly across the lobby. Claire's face lost color. "What?" Commander Mercer was part of the original architecture team that designed the emergency countermeasure protocols 12 years ago. Claire stared at him. "That is impossible." Holloway held her gaze calmly. "No, ma'am. What is impossible is replacing a man like Caleb Mercer after treating him like he was invisible." Somewhere deep inside the building, an alarm suddenly echoed once through the executive floors. Then every monitor inside the lobby flickered black. Every screen inside Whitmore Dynamics went dark at exactly 7:14 p.m. Trading monitors. Security feeds. Elevator panels. One by one, the glowing walls of technology that normally made the tower feel invincible faded into black reflections filled only with frightened faces. A quiet gasp moved through the executive lobby like a ripple across water. Then came the emergency backup lights, dim and amber, washing the marble floors in the uneasy glow of a building suddenly stripped of certainty. "We just lost access to the defense servers," Claire's chief technology officer said breathlessly as he rushed from the hallway clutching a laptop that no longer displayed anything except static lines. "Every encrypted channel is locked." Lieutenant General Holloway remained calm. Too calm. He stood near the center of the lobby with both hands folded behind his back while rain streaked down the towering windows behind him. "How long until the breach spreads?" Claire asked sharply. "The technology." Officer swallowed hard. "At this rate?" Less than an hour before federal systems tied to Whitmore Dynamics begin shutting down across 3 states. The room erupted into overlapping panic. Executives talking over each other. Phones failing. Security radios crackling uselessly. Yet above all of it, the low thunder of helicopter rotors continued circling overhead like a reminder that this situation had already grown far beyond corporate embarrassment. Claire turned toward Holloway. Why was a maintenance employee connected to something this classified? Holloway studied her for a moment before answering. Because 12 years ago Caleb Mercer was not cleaning floors. Another officer stepped forward carrying a slim black tablet powered separately from the building network. With one touch, a photograph appeared on the screen. Younger. Sharper. Caleb standing in desert fatigues beside a military aircraft beneath a blazing Middle Eastern sun. His posture calm. His expression unreadable. A patch on his shoulder displayed an insignia nobody in the lobby recognized. Commander Mercer led a specialized Air Force operations unit tasked with infrastructure defense during international cyber warfare escalation, Holloway said quietly. He designed emergency isolation systems currently protecting nearly 40% of military contractor communications in the Midwest region. Claire stared at the image in disbelief. The same man they had escorted out carrying a cardboard box now stood frozen on the screen beside generals and decorated officers. "That cannot be him," one executive whispered. Holloway's eyes shifted toward him. "The problem with men like Caleb Mercer is that they rarely announce who they are." Silence followed. Heavy and uncomfortable. Claire slowly reached for the tablet. Another image appeared. Caleb shaking hands with a 4-star general. Another showed him receiving a commendation inside the Pentagon. Another standing beside a rescue helicopter after a classified operation with exhausted soldiers surrounding him. Yet in every photograph, his expression remained the same. Quiet. Controlled. Almost uncomfortable with the tension itself. Claire felt something tighten painfully in her chest. Earlier that evening she had watched this man walk into the rain while employees laughed at him. "Why would someone like that work maintenance?" she asked softly. Holloway's expression changed slightly then. Not military now. Human. "His wife died 8 years ago." Claire lowered her eyes. Holloway continued. "After that, he declined every federal promotion offered to him. Requested quiet work. Limited visibility. Time with his daughter." Outside the storm intensified. Rain striking the glass tower in furious waves, while the city below blurred into streaks of gold and red lights. Somewhere in the darkness above, another helicopter approached. Larger this time. Slower. The building vibrated beneath its arrival. One young employee near the reception desk whispered almost to herself, "We fired a war hero." But Holloway shook his head gently. "No," he said. "You fired one of the few men capable of fixing what is about to happen next." Then every emergency light inside the lobby flickered once more before the entire east side of the tower suddenly went completely dark. The eastern half of Whitmore Dynamics vanished into darkness so completely that for a moment the building no longer felt like a corporate headquarters. It felt abandoned. Emergency lights pulsed weakly along the hallways while rain battered the glass exterior high above downtown Chicago. Employees stood frozen near dead computer terminals, their faces lit only by backup exit signs and the intermittent flashes of lightning outside. Somewhere below, sirens echoed through the wet streets. Claire Whitmore walked quickly beside Lieutenant General Holloway toward the executive conference level, while technicians scrambled around them carrying powerless laptops and disconnected server drives. "How bad is it?" Claire asked. "Bad enough that Washington contacted us before your own cybersecurity team understood what was happening," Holloway answered calmly. The elevator doors opened into the executive floor where the atmosphere had shifted from panic to something quieter and far more dangerous. Fear. A long conference table stretched beneath dim emergency lighting while several federal officials already occupied the room speaking in low urgent tones. One large monitor still functioned independently through military backup systems. Across the screen glowed a classified personnel file marked restricted access only. Caleb Mercer's photograph appeared at the top. Claire slowed as she approached the screen. Somehow seeing his face there beside federal insignias unsettled her more than the helicopters had. Holloway nodded toward the monitor. "You wanted to know who he was." The first line appeared beneath the image. Commander Caleb Mercer. United States Air Force Special Operations. Security clearance level Omega-7. Claire felt her breath catch slightly. Another official tapped the screen and new photographs surfaced one after another. Caleb inside underground command rooms filled with glowing tactical maps. Caleb standing beside foreign diplomats. Caleb helping exhausted civilians board evacuation helicopters after an unnamed overseas disaster. Yet even surrounded by military personnel and decorated officers, he always looked the same. Quiet. Reserved. Detached from praise itself. He specialized in infrastructure defense and emergency systems architecture, Holloway explained. When communication grids failed during international conflicts, Mercer built contingency networks capable of restoring civilian coordination in under 6 hours. Claire stared silently. One executive whispered, "My God." Another file appeared. Commendation for extraordinary service under crisis conditions. Then another. Presidential Distinguished Operations Medal. Then finally the last page surfaced slowly onto the screen. Retired voluntarily following spousal fatality. Requested non-public status. Recommended for privacy protection. Claire lowered her eyes. For several seconds nobody spoke. The rain outside softened briefly against the windows, replaced only by the low mechanical hum of emergency power generators somewhere deep beneath the tower. He never used any of this? Claire asked quietly. Holloway looked at her carefully. Men like Caleb Mercer do not confuse service with status. Another official spoke up from the far side of the room. We attempted to reactivate retired defense personnel 3 years ago. Mercer declined every offer. Why? Claire asked. Holloway's expression softened almost imperceptibly. His daughter. Claire pictured the framed photograph from the cardboard box again. The missing tooth. The baseball cap. The simple happiness in her smile. Suddenly the image of Caleb walking alone through the rain felt almost unbearable. He chose maintenance work because it kept him close to home, Holloway continued. Predictable hours. Health insurance. Stability. The room fell silent once more. One board member slowly removed his glasses and rubbed his face. And we fired him over budget reductions. Nobody answered. Outside, another flash of lightning illuminated the skyline in white streaks across the storm clouds. Claire moved closer to the glowing monitor almost without realizing it. A final note appeared at the bottom of the classified file. In event of critical system failure, contact Commander Mercer immediately. Priority status absolute. Claire read the line twice. Then her assistant rushed breathlessly into the conference room holding a satellite phone. Ms. Whitmore, she said shakily. Federal Communications just confirmed the breach has spread into national defense routing channels. Holloway took the phone first. Listened silently. Then lowered it slowly. We are out of time. Claire looked toward the dark storm outside the glass tower where the helicopters still hovered above the city like silent guardians waiting for an answer only one man could provide. By the time Claire Whitmore's black sedan pulled away from downtown Chicago, the storm had begun settling into a cold, steady rain that painted the city in blurred gold reflections and restless shadows. The helicopters still circled somewhere behind the clouds above the skyline, but now their distant rotor sounds felt less like power and more like urgency. Claire sat silently in the back seat while Lieutenant General Holloway remained beside her reviewing encrypted updates on a military tablet. Neither spoke for nearly 10 minutes. Outside the windows, the towering glass buildings slowly gave way to quieter neighborhoods lined with old brick apartments, dim porch lights, and small diners preparing to close for the night. Finally Claire looked up. He really never told anyone? Holloway shook his head without looking away from the screen. Mercer spent years making sure nobody saw him as anything except a father trying to survive. Claire lowered her eyes again. Earlier that evening she had signed his termination papers without even standing up from her chair. The memory now sat inside her chest like something sharp and heavy. The sedan turned onto a narrow residential street, lined with aging maple trees dripping rainwater onto parked cars. Holloway nodded toward a modest duplex near the end of the block. Warm yellow light glowed softly behind the curtains. That is his place. Claire expected security systems, military guards, something extraordinary. Instead she saw chipped porch paint, a child's bicycle leaning beside the stairs, and a tiny plastic pumpkin still sitting near the front door weeks after Halloween. The simplicity of it unsettled her more than the classified files had. The car stopped quietly at the curb. For a moment nobody moved. Then through the rain-speckled window Claire saw him. Caleb stood inside the small kitchen wearing a faded gray thermal shirt with the sleeves rolled up. Steam drifted from a pot on the stove while soft music played faintly somewhere in the background. Lily sat at the counter swinging her legs while coloring on the back of what looked like an old grocery receipt. Caleb leaned slightly toward her, listening carefully as she spoke with animated excitement about something only children could make sound important. Then he laughed softly. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to make Lily grin. Claire stared through the rain at the scene unfolding inside that tiny kitchen. No medals, no rank, no bitterness, just warmth. Holloway watched her quietly. Most men with his history disappear into anger, he said softly. Mercer disappeared into fatherhood. Inside the house, Caleb placed a plate of spaghetti in front of Lily before kneeling beside her chair to wipe a small smear of sauce from her cheek with a paper napkin. Lily giggled. You always miss one spot, she said proudly. That is because you move around too much. I get that from you. Caleb smiled faintly. That is unfortunate for society. Claire felt something inside her chest shift unexpectedly. She had spent years surrounded by powerful men who measured worth through contracts, titles, and visibility. Yet the most respected man in the country had chosen this quiet little kitchen over all of it. Lightning flickered softly beyond the clouds, briefly illuminating the room through the curtains. Caleb glanced toward the window, then toward the street, as if sensing movement outside. His expression sharpened almost instantly. Not fear. Awareness. The kind developed by someone who had spent years noticing what others missed. Stay here 1 second, Bug, he told Lily gently. He crossed the small living room calmly while the old wooden floor creaked beneath his steps. Claire suddenly became aware of her own heartbeat as he opened the front door. Cold rain drifted through the porch light while Caleb stood there looking directly toward the black sedan parked at the curb. His eyes settled first on Holloway, then on Claire. No surprise crossed his face, only quiet understanding, as if somehow he had known this moment was coming the second the helicopters touched the sky above Chicago. Rain dripped steadily from the edge of the porch roof as Caleb Mercer stood barefoot on the worn wooden steps, staring quietly at the black sedan parked beside the curb. The neighborhood around them remained still except for the distant hum of traffic several blocks away, and the soft rattling of leaves blowing across wet pavement. Behind Caleb, warm kitchen light spilled gently through the open doorway, carrying the smell of garlic, tomato sauce, and baked bread into the cold night air. Lieutenant General Holloway stepped out first, adjusting his coat against the rain. Commander. Caleb gave a small nod. General. No handshake followed. No military formality. Just the quiet recognition of two men who understood each other without needing performance. Claire stepped from the car more slowly. Her heels touched the wet sidewalk carefully as she looked up toward the small duplex again. Somehow standing there in person made her expensive coat and polished appearance feel strangely out of place. Caleb's eyes moved briefly toward her, calm and unreadable. Ms. Whitmore. Claire swallowed lightly. Mr. Mercer. From inside the house, Lily's voice floated toward the doorway. Dad, is somebody here? Caleb glanced back over his shoulder. Just some people from work, Bug. Do they want spaghetti too? A faint smile almost appeared in Holloway's expression. Caleb looked back toward them. She thinks feeding people solves everything. Holloway answered softly, sometimes it does. For a moment nobody moved. Rain tapped steadily against the porch railing while soft music continued playing somewhere inside the house. Finally Claire stepped forward slightly. We need your help. Caleb studied her face carefully. Not with anger. Not with satisfaction. Just quiet attention. Claire suddenly realized that somehow made everything harder. The breach spread into federal defense systems, she continued. Your protocols are the only thing slowing it down. Caleb leaned lightly against the porch frame, crossing his arms. Then you still have some time. Not much, Holloway said. Caleb nodded once as if he already knew. Lightning flickered faintly beyond the clouds, illuminating the wet street in pale silver for half a second before darkness settled again. Claire took a slow breath. I did not know who you were. Caleb's expression never changed. That was intentional. The honesty of it hit harder than blame would have. Claire lowered her eyes briefly before speaking again. I should not have treated you the way I did. Caleb remained silent for several seconds, long enough for the rain and distant rotor blades above the city to fill the space between them. Then he spoke quietly. People usually see what their world trains them to see. Claire looked back up at him. And what does that mean? Caleb glanced through the doorway toward Lily laughing softly at cartoons in the kitchen. A lot of people stop looking deeper once they think they understand someone. His voice carried no bitterness, no accusation. That somehow made Claire's chest ache even more. Holloway. Step closer. Commander. We can handle transportation immediately. Washington is waiting. Caleb nodded slowly but did not move. Instead, he asked one simple question. How long? Holloway understood instantly. A few hours at most. Caleb looked back inside the house again. Lily now sat at the counter drawing stars across a napkin with blue marker, completely unaware that military helicopters hovered above the city waiting for her father. I promised her movie night, Caleb said quietly. Claire blinked in surprise. What? Caleb met her eyes calmly. I do not break promises to my daughter. Silence settled over the porch. Holloway looked toward the rain-dark sky for a moment before answering softly. Then we work around movie night. For the first time that evening, Claire saw something shift faintly in Caleb's expression. Not pride. Not triumph. Respect. Small. Quiet. Earned. Caleb stepped aside from the doorway. You should come in before the food gets cold. The small duplex felt impossibly warm compared to the chaos swallowing downtown Chicago. Rain tapped gently against the kitchen windows while an old animated movie played softly from a television balanced on a crooked bookshelf in the living room. The scent of garlic bread and spaghetti filled the air, mixing with cinnamon candles and the faint smell of laundry detergent from clothes drying nearby. Claire Whitmore sat stiffly at Caleb Mercer's tiny kitchen table beside Lieutenant General Holloway, both of them looking strangely out of place beneath the soft yellow light hanging overhead. Lily swung her legs happily from her chair while drawing stars across a paper napkin with blue marker. Dad says rain makes spaghetti taste better, she announced proudly. Holloway nodded solemnly. Your father may be one of the smartest men I know. Lily grinned instantly. I know. Caleb set another plate down quietly before taking his own seat at the table. No ceremony. No attention. Just simple routine practiced 1,000 times before tonight changed everything around them. Claire watched him carefully as he reached over to twist the lid off Lily's juice bottle without even being asked. Small movements. Familiar. Movements. The kind built from years of showing up for someone every single day. She suddenly realized she had spent her entire adult life around men who demanded respect loudly, while the man sitting across from her earned it in silence without even trying. Lily looked toward Claire curiously. Are you Dad's boss? Claire hesitated. Caleb answered first. Not anymore. Lily tilted her head thoughtfully. Did you get promoted? Holloway coughed softly into his fist to hide a smile while Claire felt heat rise unexpectedly into her cheeks. Caleb simply twirled spaghetti onto Lily's fork with patient precision. Something like that. The television flickered softly across the room while rainwater traced slow lines down the kitchen windows. For a few minutes nobody mentioned military systems or cyber attacks or helicopters circling above the city. They simply ate dinner in the quiet little kitchen of a man who had once protected national infrastructure, and now worried more about whether his daughter finished her vegetables. Claire found herself staring at the family photographs taped unevenly across the refrigerator. Lily at a school science fair. Lily holding a fish beside a lake. Caleb beside her in every picture wearing the same gentle smile that never quite reached full confidence, like a man still learning how to exist peacefully after years spent surviving storms. Then Claire noticed one framed photograph near the sink. A woman with warm brown eyes laughing beside Caleb beneath autumn trees. Lily much younger in her arms. Claire lowered her voice. Your wife. Caleb glanced briefly toward the picture. The softness in his expression changed almost invisibly. Emily. Holloway looked down respectfully. Caleb continued quietly. She used to say Lily inherited all the stubbornness in the family. Lily smiled proudly. Mom said Dad gets sad when it rains. Silence settled gently around the table. Caleb looked at his daughter for a moment before answering. Your mom said a lot of smart things. Claire suddenly understood something the classified files could never explain. Caleb Mercer had not walked away from greatness because he lacked strength. He walked away because grief changed the shape of his life and he chose love over recognition. Outside the storm deepened again. The distant sound of helicopter blades echoed faintly above the neighborhood, while somewhere downtown entire defense systems continued failing by the minute. Yet inside the little duplex, Caleb remained calm enough to refill Lily's juice cup before his own water glass. Claire watched him carefully. How are you this steady? She asked softly before she could stop herself. Caleb leaned back slightly in his chair, eyes resting on Lily as she colored another crooked blue star. When you lose someone you love, he said quietly, You stop wasting energy pretending every problem is the end of the world. Claire looked down at her untouched glass of water. For the first time in years, the powerful CEO who commanded billion-dollar contracts felt very small sitting in the kitchen of a man she had completely failed to see. By 11:43 p.m., the executive operations floor inside Whitmore Dynamics no longer sounded like a corporate headquarters. It sounded like a command center fighting to stay alive. Emergency generators hummed beneath the building, while exhausted technicians moved rapidly between glowing monitors restored through military backup systems. Rain lashed against the towering windows overlooking downtown Chicago, turning the city beyond into streaks of blurred gold and silver beneath the storm. Yet in the center of the chaos, Caleb Mercer sat perfectly calm. The faded gray thermal shirt he wore beneath an old Navy jacket looked strangely ordinary beneath the glow of billion-dollar technology systems and classified federal equipment. But nobody in the room saw a maintenance worker anymore. They watched him the way soldiers watch a pilot during turbulence. Quietly, carefully, waiting for direction. Route the secondary firewall through the isolated relay clusters, Caleb said evenly while studying streams of encrypted code across 4 different monitors. If they mirror the breach again, shut down civilian crossover before they reach emergency response channels. One federal analyst blinked in surprise. That will cut response time by almost 30%. Caleb never looked away from the screen. Better delayed than compromised. Fingers flew across keyboards instantly. Nobody questioned him. Not anymore. Claire Whitmore stood near the back of the operations room watching him work while helicopter rotor vibrations rolled faintly through the tower above them. Earlier that same evening she had watched employees laugh at this man carrying a cardboard box through the lobby. Now decorated officers, federal specialists, and cybersecurity executives waited silently for his next sentence like it carried gravity itself. Caleb leaned forward slightly. There. A technician looked up sharply. You found the breach? Caleb nodded once. Not the source. The pattern. Several monitors shifted at once as complex routing maps illuminated the darkened room in blue and white lines. Caleb pointed calmly toward one blinking section near the center. They are not trying to destroy the system. Claire frowned. Then what are they trying to do? Caleb finally looked up. Panic spreads faster than damage. Silence settled briefly across the room. Outside the storm softened slightly, rain tracing slow rivers down the enormous glass windows while downtown lights flickered beneath the clouds. Holloway stepped closer behind Caleb. Can you stop it? Caleb's eyes returned to the monitors. Yes. The single word changed the entire room. Shoulders relaxed. Breathing slowed. Hope returned quietly like sunrise beneath heavy clouds. Caleb began typing again with calm precision, while military analysts mirrored every command across backup systems. There was no arrogance in him, no need to prove anyone wrong. He simply worked. Steady, focused, controlled. Claire felt something tighten painfully inside her chest as she realized how rare that kind of strength truly was. After nearly 40 minutes, one by one, system indicators across the room turned green again. Emergency communication lines restored. Federal routing stabilized. Infrastructure controls secure. A young technician whispered softly, "He actually did it." Nobody celebrated loudly. Somehow the room felt too humbled for that. Caleb leaned back slowly in his chair, exhausted but composed. "The breach is contained," he said quietly. "You are clear for now." Holloway exhaled deeply beside him. Several officers exchanged relieved glances while phones across the room began ringing with restored federal confirmations. Claire stepped closer carefully. "You saved us." Caleb shook his head once. "I stabilized a situation. That is different." Claire looked at him for several long seconds while rain continued tapping softly against the glass walls surrounding the operations floor. "After everything that happened today," she asked quietly, "why did you still come back?" Caleb remained silent for a moment. The room itself seemed to pause with her question. Then his eyes drifted toward the storm outside where distant helicopter lights hovered against the clouds above Chicago. "Because good people do not stop being good," he said softly, "just because somebody failed to recognize their value." Nobody in the room spoke after that. Not the executives. Not the officers. Not the analysts who once ignored him in the hallways. Silence settled over the operations floor so completely that even the storm outside seemed quieter now. And standing there beneath the soft glow of restored lights, Claire Whitmore finally understood the difference between a powerful man and a truly great one. When a struggling single father is fired and forced to walk home through the rain, nobody inside the powerful defense company realizes they just humiliated a hidden American hero. But everything changes when military helicopters descend over downtown Chicago, and a cold-hearted female CEO discovers the quiet maintenance worker once protected national defense systems. Filled with emotional redemption, quiet dignity, family values, and unforgettable character moments, this cinematic drama delivers touching stories that reveal the strength of kindness and sacrifice. As the single father chooses his daughter over fame and chooses grace over revenge, the female CEO begins to understand what true greatness looks like. These touching stories blend emotional realism, military mystery, and heartfelt humanity into one unforgettable journey. Fans of touching stories, emotional hero narratives, and inspiring American dramas will connect deeply with this powerful tale. Experience touching stories filled with hope, healing, and second chances. Discover why touching stories like this leave entire rooms silent. Thank you for being here until the very end. Your support truly means a lot to this channel. Before you leave, tell us, are you watching as a husband, wife, mom, dad? Or just someone who enjoys stories like this? Share your answer in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video,